Let's now talk financial planning, and Freshwater Wealth financial advisor Roger Perrett is with us to talk about how people can best create financial goals to fund, well, their best lifestyle. Roger, good to see you.
Thanks, Henry.
So, does everyone have a financial goal?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you know, I provide advice for high net worth professionals looking to retire, and we probably get a few type of responses. Some people walk in and they've got very, very clear goals. I'd say the majority of people, though, walk in and they don't have any goals, and they're hoping from a financial perspective we can help them come up with some goals. But I think mainly people are just wanting to continue their existing lifestyle, and that's really their overarching goal.
So it really depends where you are in the life cycle, doesn't it? Whether you're just starting out, just got a job, or perhaps you're at the other end nearing retirement, how to sustain and support your lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So there's some core principles, but you're absolutely right. Like as we go through life, our goals may fundamentally change.
All right. So how do you talk them through that process, and perhaps what they need to consider depending on whether they own a home, they want to own a home, they're renting? What are the variables?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is almost come up with the picture today, and I think I've given a slide here which goes through those sort of major things like, you know, where are you living, what's your career look like, what's your family look like, etc. So really getting that current picture, and then as we've seen there on the chart there, almost having a timeline and imagining life in sort of 5 to 10 years, and then describing the picture then. So are we, for example, with our home, are we still living in the same home? Are we renovating? Are we upsizing, downsizing? And almost going through it quite methodically in terms of all those areas of our lives, and sort of picturing what that's going to be in the future. And hopefully it's exciting, right? Because this is what people, their plans for their life. So hopefully it's quite an exciting process for people.
But given you're more likely to be advising high net worth individuals, is this more about funding a easy sort of retirement with greater wealth?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the first step, because when people have got that clearer picture of where they're heading, then it's up to us then to say, okay, well, how do we fund those goals? How do we, if there's things that we need to consider down the track, how do we take those into consideration when we then create strategies for them? So it's really the first step, creating their overarching goals, and then we sort of dive another layer down in terms of then creating their financial goals.
When you look at assets, is the question of, do you ask them, do you want income? Do you want growth? Do you want a combination of both? How does that work?
Yeah, that's right, and it really depends. So like as you said before, if we're in the accumulation phase, it's probably that point. Their income goal is all about how do we create more surplus income, and whether that to be used on lifestyle or reducing debt or super contributions or even investing. There are a couple of examples of goals for sort of like accumulators. But yeah, it certainly changes when we're then looking at closer to retirement, because we flip it. And we're sort of saying, well, instead of how much income are we wanting to generate, or surplus income are we wanting to generate, it's more than a goal of how much do you need for the rest of your life. So a goal for a high net worth investor may be, well, I need 150,000 every single year for the rest of my life, and so that goal is very different, even though it's all around income compared to the accumulator.
And it also depends on your stance too, of how aggressive you want to be, or whether you want to be more defensive, which maybe you become more conservative later in life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's like probably when we get to the investment stage, to work out, okay, what's the person's risk profile? And sometimes there is a gap, Andrew, as you say. Do you know what I mean? To say, look, this is your goal, this is where you're wanting to invest, and there's two approaches. One, you may actually need to take more risk to be able to achieve that goal, or sometimes it's the opposite. Maybe as a high net worth investor, maybe you don't need to take as much risk to achieve that goal as well.
Well, it always comes down to that question of, particularly when you're looking at retirement, how much money do you need? Because no one knows how long they're going to live for. But on top of that, I guess, maybe you're in the position to where you want to engage in some philanthropic activities as well. Want to actually do some good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't always have to be about
you as
about
such.
You.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It can be, as you say, about charities, but it also can be about family. How do I support perhaps grandchildren? We see that in terms of private school fees and things like that. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't always have to be inward looking.
And look, also tax comes into it too, and perhaps legislative changes.
Yeah, that's right. So I think in terms of people achieving their goals, there are a whole bunch of barriers that can basically knock people, and one of them is legislation changes. It's very hard these days for the average person to understand all the legislation and all understand the benefits and what have you. But then the legislation's changing all the time as well. So as an advisor, I think that's one of the major, benefits to be able to keep abreast of all those legislation changes.